Good evening, good evening. Welcome to the premiere edition of Making a Difference in the Lives of the Others. I am your host, Ray Sechrengost, and I'm blessed today to have my very first guest, Pastor Charlie Caswell of the Legacy of Legends CDC here in the Memphis community. Good evening. Hey, what we're going to do tonight is a brand new concept that we're going to kind of go through and get to know the community leaders each week. We're going to start with Charlie Caswell, who's one of my heroes, one of my mentors, and a fantastic pastor and a human being. And we're going to allow Charlie to introduce himself, tell you a little bit about himself, and then we're going to go into some questions that I have put together for Charlie. And as he goes through, he'll give some detail on specific things that are happening here in the community. After which time, we will take a look at the viewers' questions, and Charlie will have a chance to answer 3 to 5 or however many he answers, because there's one thing I know about Charlie Caswell: no does not live in his vocabulary. I just simply believe that he does not have such a word in his vocabulary. So, and then finally, what we will be doing is we will finish out with our closing trademark question, and you'll have to wait till the end for that. So with that, may I introduce to you Pastor Charlie Caswell, CEO, Legacy of Legends Community Development Center. All around, he's involved. He's got his hands in a little bit of everything, making a difference in the community. Charlie, thank you for joining me this evening.
Appreciate you, Brother Ray. How you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit, Charlie, about yourself, how you got started in this role. As I know, last year you were a pastor of a very successful church, and you decided to follow God's calling and step out to bring awareness to ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, primarily in our schools, and how it leads into mental health issues in adults. So can you touch a little bit on how that journey started for you?
Yeah. Well, again, I appreciate being on the show here to Making a Difference. Charlie Caswell, I started, and I can just start early on in my life to kind of bring you to what brings me to the work that I do. I grew up here in the city of Memphis, Tennessee. In a community at the time was a project, but now have been redeveloped to Hope 6 project, which is the Dixie Home projects in North Memphis. For those who are familiar with the Memphis area, it's around the Labona Hospital area. But at the time that I grew up there, it was a time when crack cocaine came on the scene. So as a child, to go from being able to play in the neighborhood, playing hide and go see and other games that we played in our community, to it jumping to becoming a crack epidemic in a crack community. Sadly, in my family, having 17 brothers and sisters, in which 10 of us live in a house together there, family members got caught up in selling the drugs, and those who know me know my story. I wrote a book, and you can read some of that in that book. But seeing things early on in my life that, from being molested as a child, from having a gun put to my head and someone pulling the trigger, attempting to shoot, seeing friends die, killed right in front of me in the community, those type of traumatic impact led, I believe, no doubt, to the work that I do today, that I want to help other folks, especially our young people, where they don't have to live growing up in that way, Ray.
I think it's an amazing thing that you're doing. Sometimes it shocks me, Charlie, when I see a cause and all of a sudden there's Charlie Caswell. It's you don't have any boundaries. Especially if it's helping the babies, you're all in 100%.
Yeah.
ACEs is something that is clinically proven, scientifically proven. It's a 10-question questionnaire on things that happened to you as a child. Charlie knows a lot more facts about that, but I do encourage everyone to confidentially, anonymously take that test. I know from me personally, what I learned from taking that test was that I scored 7 out of 10 ACEs when I took it. And I thought, okay, that's a lot, and it took me quite a while, but I got my mother to take it, and my mother scored 10 out of 10. And what that made me realize is that there is some hereditary, there is some genetic, there is some environment that goes along with that. And so the goal of Charlie and the Legacy of Legends and the collective is to break that cycle at an early age so that we're not dealing with such severe mental health issues in adults. And we'll talk more about the wraparound services for that. Charlie, can you explain how you started Legacy of Legends Community Development Center and its community involvement today?
Well, I say that, it started for me back many years ago, about 2008, when I began as the executive director of the Rangeline Community Development Corporation in the Fraser community, with a focus on working with youth, especially around teen pregnancy. We had some of the highest infant mortality rate in some third world countries right here in the community of Fraser, and where we saw 16.9 per every 1,000 baby born in our community dying to infant mortality. And seeing and doing that work, I knew then that it was much deeper from the assessment of almost 300 plus young men and even the young women and the young men that they were dating and was pregnant by, that it went deeper than them just having sex. It was deeper to the point that when I did the assessment of many of them to find out when they was a child that they was molested as a child. So you had the parents coming in and said, this little fast tail little girl. I said, well, you may then talk to her about the fact that the man that you was dating was trying to hit on her or having sex, tried to have sex with her, or she had sex at an early age. So we looked at some of those deep-rooted issues and knew that we as a community had to do something to dig a lot deeper and to get the revelation and evidence on adverse childhood experience to understand that it's not what's wrong with these children. Is what happened to them, understanding that in 1996 when the Center for Disease Control in Casa Ferranete did the original research study on ACEs, that out of 17,500 of those individuals that they researched, 80% of them were middle-class white individuals. And let me say this, is that when you talk about ACEs, Ray, it's not just a black or white thing. It's universal. When you talk about our young kids. And it said that those who had 4 or more traumatic experience have like 12 times more likely to attempt suicide, 40 to 50% more likely to use drugs and alcohol, and many other outcomes that we can talk about. But that kind of led to me in my journey from being the executive director of Rangeline Community Development, then becoming the senior pastor of Union Grove Baptist Church, and then hearing God's voice to call me out of a position to fulfilling my purpose was easy for me to do because I knew that it was deeper than what was happening in our community and somebody needed to do something about it. And that's where we at today.
Absolutely, Charlie, and I think you just barely touched on the iceberg on the increase having to do with smoking, drugs, suicide, repeated ACEs to their children. I know one of the hard things for me once I got into ACEs and understanding that it wasn't what was wrong with me, it was simply what happened to me, and that I needed to practice ways to slow my ACEs down. I realized that...
You said slow his ACEs down.
That's correct.
Adverse childhood experience.
Correct. And you know, that's key because, I didn't find out until my late 40s, but it's a proven fact that people who have been traumatized traumatize other people. Yeah,
hurt people hurt people.
That's correct.
And again, we want you out there to share these videos so this information can get out to others. And when Ray talk about that hurt people and traumatize people, that's something we have to do among ourselves. Before we talk about helping somebody else, we need to examine ourselves. Brother Ray, this is a Sunday. If you don't mind, I just have a scripture there, Acts chapter 19, verse 14. And it talks about the 7 sons of Sheba. And it talks about the 7 sons of Sheba was getting ready to go and cast some demons out of a particular individual. And when they got to this person who was possessed, the individual looked at them and said, Paul I know, Jesus I know, but who are you?
Right.
And if you're sitting there and you don't know who you are, you haven't dealt with what happened to you, it's going to be hard for you to understand what happened to somebody else. So you're looking at them like what's wrong with them when we need to be checking what's happened to you.
And to touch, just to piggyback off on that, Charlie, I agree that there's some healing and some strength and some blessing that comes from when you are able to see what is going on with you. Mm-hmm. Now it makes sense. Okay, there's not something wrong with me. It's something that happened to me.
Yeah.
And now I can go out and I can help others see that same thing and break that cycle, and go into the homes with the parents and the families and explain that same thing. I'm going to tell you, it's never too late to address adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah.
That being said, moving forward, the next question leads us right into ACEs, and I know where we're going to go with this, but one of the biggest desires, Charlie, I made a joke about you being Flash Gordon and being everywhere and anywhere, and you don't say no. Tell me what giving back to the community and that significance means to you from your upbringing and from where you came from. Again,
growing up in poverty and really not having much or nothing in a lot of cases, but having family, having brothers and a lot of brothers and sisters, I can say I had that, and had love of my father and my mother. They did what they could with what they had, and we experienced that relationship there. But through life. But one of the things that happened to me, a few things that happened to me, but one of the things that really touched me early on in my life, Ray, was even when I was in the 5th grade, and I found myself with this teacher named Mr. Snipe, and I promise I wish I can catch up with Mr. Snipe, but I believe he probably passed by now.
Sir.
But Mr. Snipe was a white older teacher that I had, and he always said, Charlie, you're going to be somebody. He used to call me Mr. CC, and then everybody in the community started calling me Mr. CC, and even the kids used to spray paint my name on the thing and on the boards. When they board up a house, it's there on the, and so I didn't do that. Somebody else did it, but it was spray painted on there. And to that, one of the things happened one Christmas where he knew that our family wasn't going to have much for Christmas. He was hearing about Caswell, Charlie wasn't getting enough for Christmas. And I maybe told it to some kids in the classroom. And so he showed up Christmas Eve. And man, when I tell you he showed up with bags of clothes and food and toys. Yeah. We had so much stuff that we was able to give other people stuff. Amen. And so it's things like that happened in my life that I said somebody did something for me that didn't have to do it. And so for me to do for somebody else, it just, again, you reap what you sow. Absolutely. And I thank God that I had that type of impact, and many others in my life, but especially that one that stick with me and make me continue to do what I do.
Excellent. Today, as I was doing my homework on Charlie Caswell, I got to study in Northside High School, over, as I recall, over off of Chelsea Avenue. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at numbers. And so my question was, that particular school is doing better, but it's still below the state averages. And my question...
But Northside closed. Yeah, Northside is gone.
Okay.
Yeah, they shut it down.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, that school there is no longer...
Well, I thought it was picked up by Shelby County School Districts because it was part of Memphis Schools.
No, yeah, they did pick it up and then they shut it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, based on what I
The
was
numbers,
just asking.
yeah, some of the numbers, and two, numbers have decreased in that community. So when you look at the fact, you had Hertz Village to shut down, you had what's that other community, Dixie Home, a lot of the projects to shut down, and then people began to move out of that community, and so families start taking their children to other schools or what have you, and so yeah, the enrollment number was low. School hold about 1,500 people. I think it was down to almost 300 and some people going to school. So.
On that note, where I was going with that was I wanted to get the opinion from the Fraser community and the Raleigh community and North Memphis with this charter school thing that they're doing. There are a few select people in those areas that can get vouchers and take their children elsewhere outside of the schools.
Yeah.
But it seems to me, now not being an expert on it, but this is a devastation to the school system and the community by having the voucher programs.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion?
Well, I'm gonna say that it can be a devastation. I think too, with that, it just makes the schools in our community to step their game up. The thing is that you can't just take some family for granted as if you automatically going to get their child and not even educate their child, right. and allow them to just go through the system. I don't think that it's going to, a lot of parents are going to take advantage of that, because sadly, when you look at it, it's only $7,500 or so. Some of these private schools still is $13,000, $14,000 plus, that parents right now are just trying to survive. We talk about the fact of having living wage. Some of these parents in the community are working 2 jobs already, trying to make a household fit.
Right.
Some of the communities in Fraser, sadly, you got 10,000 annual income in these communities. So it can have an impact. Yet I say any competition is always good. Right. And so for those, when the Achievement School District first came into the community, Fraser was the target community for that. And so then it made Shelby County Schools create the I-Zone. So the I-Zone began to change the game. Absolutely. And so they took the level up. So you look at things like that and say, yes, it can be it's good, it can be bad, but then it can be good at the same time.
Excellent. Yeah, that's good. It kind of helps level the playing field a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic. Let's get to your favorite topic. If I had to pick one topic that I would say Charlie Caswell's favorite topic is, can you give us a couple-minute brief but detailed explanation of ACEs and adverse childhood experiences?
Well, as I was sharing earlier, when you talk about ACEs and adverse childhood experience, you talk about the fact of the forming the norm. And so you think about it this way, Roy. If you was in the military and you got trained to fight, and they told you that this is what you're going to do is fight, and they trained you for that, well, why would we penalize somebody that come home still ready to fight? And so it's because that's what they're trying to do. Well, you take a child that's from the birth, been kicked, cussed out, hit, told they'll never be nothing, and now they're 13, 14 years old, and that toxic stress level is that high, and all they've been trained to do is fight. And that in many fights they couldn't win. Right. So when they get out here in these streets, sadly, we see them acting out. Sadly, we see them when they get to school and they bullying another child. And so that's why it's been so important with me to see the educational system become trauma-informed and trauma-responsive, because many times teachers, you don't see what's happening in the lives of that child when they're at home. You don't see them before they got to school. And when they get to your classroom and you sitting there saying, child, what's wrong with you? That's the wrong question. We should be asking what happened to that child, so that that child can get the support and help that they need so they can be a successful person. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, that is a free questionnaire that you can take anonymously and privately. I know that Pastor Charlie is compiling some data, and you can find that on my page as well as Charlie's page. On a survey, it'll take you 2 to 4 minutes to complete, and it would be good for you to know. I know a lot of people, when they score a 1, they're thrilled. Yeah. But then there are other people who score anything above a 4, you start getting into areas that might need to be addressed.
Well, even Ray, if they score 1, because some people resilience is not at the level of other people. So that one being molested as a child can cause somebody to really want to commit suicide, or that one having a parent and locked up in jail can form a norm that they think, well, it's okay if I get to do a little crime, do it, because that's what their norm was to be. So again, unless you have that resilience built up, that's why mentors and positive people being around you and making sure that you put yourself in good places with the right people can help bring that what I call that hedge of protection that protect you for when that triggering comes, that makes people, as I say it often, Ray, is that survival trump knowledge every time. Right? When people are out to survive, what they know go out the window. All they care about is how they're going to eat or how they're going to take care of the situation that they're in. Right. And I just say to the listeners out there, as I say many times when I train people and talk about ACEs, what would you do if you met a bear in the woods? Ooh. Yeah. And many times, 3 things happen when you're traumatized. You freeze, you fight, or you take flight.
That's right.
And many times when I talk to young people, when I go down to juvenile court and do this training or work with many in the inner city, the first thing they say is they're going to fight the bear.
Right.
They might lose, but that's what they want to do. But what happens when you got to go home every day and that bear is in the woods? And so this is what's happened to many of our children, having that impact of stress, have to fight every day, got to take flight every day, got to freeze every day because of what happened to them or what's happening to them.
That's a really good point. Sweeping it under the rug, per se, does not deal with that trauma. You're just putting it off for another day, and that bear is going to be there.
Yeah.
And that hinders you. Those type of things hinder you from having healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Trusting people.
Yeah.
Things like that. And overprotection of your own children, and we can go on and on.
Yeah.
And it's real easy in that circumstance to flip that statement and say, something's wrong with me, that's why this happened to me.
Right.
And that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
Moving on, I will caption, sorry I dropped the note. I will caption, this is a little plug for Charlie, but if you go to Amazon.com, Charlie wrote a book that's called How to Become More Visible, Vocal, and Valuable to Your Community with the 7 Ps. And I'm going to let Charlie get into the details of that, but I will tell you that it's $4.99. He did mention to me earlier he's working on a new revised version.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, this is a fantastic book from a man who has walked it, lived it, talked it, and seen the success from it.
Yeah.
So that leads me into my question. Charlie, what is a 3V leader?
A 3V leader is, and from my book, How to Become More Visible, Vocal, and Valuable to Your Community. A 3V leader is someone who does just that. And from the book, I teach it and train in there about how to communicate, how to collaborate, and how to connect with the 7 Ps in your community: the police, the pastors, the politicians, the parents, the principals, the proprietors, and the partners in that community. Understanding that it takes that unity in a community to make anything happen, right? That old saying, it takes a village to raise the child. Sadly, in our community, it's easy to say pull yourself up by your bootstrap, but guess what? What if you don't know where to get the boots from? Right. And sadly, in some communities, in some places, people don't know you're supposed to have boots and where to get them from, but somebody in that community do. And so this book talks about the role of the pastor, the role of the politicians, the role of the principal. And when you understand your role and people collectively roll in together, things can begin to happen. And then my book is based out of the work we've been doing many years in the Fraser community. You go back all the way to 2008. So when you look at the news now and you see that we got over $100 million worth of development about to take place in that community, it's because the 7 Ps in that community didn't give up.
That's right.
We worked together. We knew that it was going to take that unity in the community to make it happen. That book had led to me being invited twice to Washington, D.C. by the Obama administration, working with them to be a neighborhood capacity. I work with and train with the Department of Justice, Department of Education, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Housing, and the Department of Treasury to talk about how do you bring resources together to make your community better. And so that book is that. And so now I have decided to have Rotary Family Youth Initiative using that book as a model for the work that we're doing across the state of Tennessee. We've been given a grant to basically educate communities across the state of Tennessee how to build capacity, how to come together, and how to bring an awareness to adverse childhood experience throughout the state.
That must have just been good luck, huh? Not hard work, huh, Charlie?
I wish it was. A lot of praying.
Hey, you've got the Lord's favor on you, but you've earned it.
Yeah.
Let's get into what we really, when we really got connected was, I saw the work that you were doing, and I am not Charlie Caswell, but I have a heart like Charlie Caswell. And so I got to thinking outside the box, and I was like, hey, my state representative is Mark White, and he's the chair of the Education Committee, and what if I could get us to sit down with him? I don't have to know everything, because my buddy Charlie Caswell has got all that covered.
Yeah.
And his lovely sister, and of course Jim Warden with Ascent Health.
Yeah.
What an asset he is to have on the team.
Yeah.
So we were able to sit down at lunch, and the reception was amazing. I mean, it really put a fire in us.
Yeah.
That, hey, here's someone who's got some stroke.
Yeah.
And he's given us a task. If this is that important to you,
yeah,
bring me something I can work with.
Yeah.
And talk about how the collective and all of that started building from there. You had already had the collective, but that took us up over
another level. I hope that those listeners, Ray, heard what you said. Here you are, a white guy from the suburbs, seen a guy in the hood doing some work. You said, look here, I ain't going to let my prejudice keep me from connecting. See, you could have let Fox News, CNN, all of that blind you from the fact somebody who cared enough to be doing something. How do I connect? And you say, if nothing else, let me just make the connection from my representative to this individual.
Yes.
Many times we are out of place because we're not with the right people doing the right thing. And your representative has the power and is in position to be able to do something that we would have taken us years to try to get to a place to do. The Bible says it this way: one can put 1,000 to flight, 2 10,000 to flight. Right now, we got something that's going to help tens of millions across the state because you seen something in me, and God allowed us to connect in like kind for the same issue.
Yes, sir.
And because of that, it was already people on the ground in their silos doing this work around adverse childhood experience, but because of Mark White leadership and heart that God gave him, and thank God he's been a principal and a teacher, and he understands. He had kids in his classroom that he was probably sitting like, what's wrong with these kids? But to know the evidence and research is undisputable. It's been tried and tried again all over the country, all over the world. People have taken this type of data and done the research and surveyed people to see the same outcomes are happening. So he said, what can we do? He said, get together and let's y'all draft a bill. And we have been working diligently every week after week ever since that meeting. Now at a found a place that we can get ready to submit that draft over hopefully in the next week or so. And pray, saints, those who are out there, pray, because this is not just about inner city black kids. This is about rural white kids who families in the rural, many of them, and I've been with them in Jackson, Tennessee, Haywood County, Knoxville. I've been up in New Bern, Tennessee, Dyersburg, talking with these same individuals that's talking about how their children are on opioids and on drugs because of what happened to them.
Absolutely.
But thinking that something was wrong with them, but you don't know the impact of emotional neglect on the child, and when they start looking for something, they look in the wrong places. And so this bill would allow us to say, as soon as that teacher take notice, as soon as that pastor, that leader take notice, who in that community is one trauma informed and trauma responsive to be able to just get that child.
Absolutely.
This bill, because of the evidence and research that we know that's out there, can save taxpayers billions of dollars.
Absolutely, no question.
Sadly, when you talk about politics, they only going to be in there for a short time, so they don't look at the 10 years down the line. But we have the evidence and proof that shows that we would save our children. The Bible tells us a good man leaving inheritance for his children. Our children will have a better future by what we're willing to do today by addressing the adverse childhood experience. And it's a gentleman by the name of Frederick Douglass. You may know him.
I know Frederick Douglass.
Frederick Douglass said it's easier to fix a child than to repair a broken man.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about this issue and we talk about what this bill can do, sadly in our state and many states across this country, in this state I can talk about $8,500 to $9,500. You just talked about the voucher, $7,500 for a child to go to school. But that same child who's been molested and abused and spit on and slapped would turn out to be somebody who did not get the help that they need, but we'll spend $55,000 to $100,000 a year to lock them up.
Absolutely.
So if we can reverse this trend and change the culture, like what we're doing, Ray, and
Absolutely.
what your heart is doing and what our heart collectively is doing, it's going to change the game for millions of kids. And I'm excited about it because it's happening right now.
Right. You know, when you can see that vision, I mean, before I came along, I know the coalition the collective was trucking along, and we're going to get there, and we're going to get there, and when you start seeing the rainbows, and you can taste it, and you can feel it, and you can sense it, and so I think that's important. What you're sharing is my background. Of course, I deal in mental health after the ACEs. With the adults, I do deal some with children, with the mental health side with their families. But basically, that's how the families can deal with their child that's acting out. And I think this is going to lead perfectly into my next question. There are lots of people who have tried to approach this ACEs surveys in the schools and so on and so forth. And they've left out a key instance is, okay, once that's identified in the child, you're sending them back into the environment where the ACEs were created. So that the families have to also be educated and dealt with. So can you tell me a little bit about what makes this, what I think is going to be a global change, and that's wraparound services?
So one of the things, Ray, when I look at this about ACEs in 1996 when they did the first survey and study, this been talked about in the top governments across the country. Why? Because it was Center for Disease Control. It was a government agency that sent out this alert to everybody to look for these things. For over 20 plus years, almost 30 years now, nobody was addressing this issue in the big picture of it. So when I got wind of it, thanks to Dr. Althea Stewart, who I partnered with some 3 years ago, awesome woman, who said, Charlie, you need this evidence and research to begin to get policymakers to do something different than what's happening. And I said, what can they do? They said, Charlie, when you can get the district attorney and the prosecutors to see that it's not what's wrong with these kids, it's what happened to them, they won't keep locking these kids up. And let me tell you what happened when we got this revelation and how it would just continue to grow in this. When I got this revelation back in 2016, the evidence and the research behind this work, we sat down with the colonel at Old Island Police Station in Fraser, Colonel James Kirkwood, and said, Kirkwood, look here, man, we can't keep locking these kids up. At that time, and you can go to Shelby County Juvenile Court records and look at it, we had over 700 plus kids every year going to jail for the top 10 incident, which 95% of them were African American kids in that community, going to jail for the top 10 incident in 2016. Well, when we began to look at the alternative and looking at how do we assess them, and I said to the colonel and to the district attorney at the time that we want to be able to have these parents come to a class when these kids are identified, and we take them through parenting classes, mission for the family. We seen that decrease go from 700 plus kids to down to 250 kids in 2 years in the Raleigh community. So the impact of getting parents to understand something, and this is what we found out. Parents were saying, I didn't know that I was doing that to my child because that was what done to me. So people don't know what they just don't know. And we can't assume what they should know because your parents taught you. You can't assume somebody else's parents taught them. And that's where we are in society. We good at judging, but we do little about how do we intervene. And I believe this bill would help us to get into the homes of family, educate them. Since I've been trained in the last year or so, over 1,500 people in the whole hour and a half training I've done, but almost 3,000 people generally, just getting them to understand from physicians to me training principals in schools, superintendents of schools, the mayors of Holly Spring and others, to get them to see this language has been powerful.
I agree, and what's great about the work that you're doing there, and everyone's doing, is they're all going to be on the same page.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have to worry about in Holly Springs, are they teaching it one way, and over in Fraser, are they teaching it another, or out here in Germantown, because we all know it don't discriminate based on bank accounts or any of those type of things. So by having a core program, I think that's going to really universalize that part.
Yeah.
Communication, collaboration, and connection is a big part of you, and you know how I feel about what I have learned from the collective from this ACE legislation. I'm sitting next to doctors and lawyers and scientists,
former mayors,
and we can go, police officers, apostles, pastors. We could just keep going on and on and on. Dr. Thea Stewart. Donnie Wheeler. There's just so many people I could go on and on.
Yeah.
By the way, shout out to Donnie Wheeler on the socks. That's our sponsor. Those are comfortable socks, sir.
I got some on myself.
They are comfortable.
Yeah.
But one of the beefs I've always had is Memphis is a huge charitable giving town.
Yeah.
Volunteers, those type of things. But what I found was there were a dozen different agencies dealing with hunger.
Yeah.
Or there were a dozen different agencies dealing with homelessness.
Yeah.
Right? And so you've got one agency feeding this many people, and you got another one says they feed this many people. What I've seen with this ACE collective is we're all working together as a collective, that we as a group, we could all go try to do our own ACEs thing, but we've come together, set the pride and all that at the table, that this is the mission. It doesn't matter who gets there and who writes what, and Dr. Simmons, I forgot to mention her. Yeah. She's a great asset.
The ACE World Foundation, who's doing great work with the Universal Parent in Place. If you know a parent right now, all over the city, you have the Universal Parent in Places. If you're stressed out, it's free. You can go and sit down, talk to them. Therapists are there, counselors are there, or just go in there and they got drumming classes, yoga classes. These things are happening. So these type of services are, but utilize those resources.
Yeah, and I agree. That's what the basics of that is. What I found is Charlie Caswell could do some work on ACEs and education by himself, and he might help a few people.
Right.
But with a coalition or a collaborative or those type of things, you can help a ton of people.
So Ray, my good friend Roy Ray
I know it confuses
with
me
Rotary
as well.
Out there. But this is the thing. This is way bigger than a Charlie Caswell. This is way bigger than a Ray. This issue is so deep and so big. We got millions of kids, and I say it to you this way. The reason why Charlie Caswell do not try to do this alone is, let's look at it this way, Ray. I talked about the upstream and the downstream often, is that if you got a troll on the bridge throwing babies down the river, many times what Ray just was talking about is that we was down the river, everybody trying to catch the baby. Right. But guess what? By the time that baby got to us, the trauma that baby went through was like, the baby like, where were you when I was being thrown off the bridge? So we knew that if we came together and go after that troll, go to the policymakers, change the laws, it's going to take all of us to do this. And that's what the book is about, how to communicate that language, that unified language, that one voice, that one sound, and then be able to connect with that one vision and then collaborate with that one mission. It changes the game every time. And that's what C3Cs is all about.
I agree. I'm going to make a personal shout out. Isn't that
Yeah,
how you say it?
yeah.
I'm going to make a shout out. I see Rebecca Matthews there.
Yeah,
That's
Nelson Caswell.
That's my fiance's best friend from high school.
Okay.
First time she's ever interacted with me without calling me some few choice names.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, maybe the mistakes that I made with her best friend.
Right. How you doing, Rebecca?
I did want to.
It's not what's wrong with him. It's what happened to him.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Charlie, we're moving on.
Yeah.
Pastoring a successful church, having watched you, your final sermon on April 28th, 2018, son, you don't have a verse 1 gear. You just come out with it.
Yeah.
How does that go? Whee! You know, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. But I mean, you were coming right out with the fire.
Yeah.
And I was telling you before we went on air that you were keeping it real.
Yeah.
To your audience. And so my question is, how do you go from pastoring a successful church? I mean, that was a successful church.
Yeah.
To walking away from it all.
Yeah.
To listen to God's calling on your life.
The way you do that is you got to recognize when you're in a position and you out of your purpose. And one of the things it came to be, even as I took that position at the church, was, I was serving as the executive director for Rangeline, utilizing Union Grove as my base for the work that I was doing. So when the pastor who was there resigned, the church said we needed a pastor, right? And so I said I'm going to help them get a pastor there. And then one day I went there. I was helping them for 2 months to get it. One day I preach a sermon, and they said, can you leave the sanctuary? So I walked out because I'm thinking maybe because I was helping them, they take up a collection or do something. I walked back in. They said, we now announce Pastor Caswell's the new pastor of Union Grove Baptist Church. All right. So for me, I was still ready to say, no, this ain't my calling. My calling is community.
Right,
so one of the mothers, a good mother, I love her, Mother William, 90-some years old, looked at me and cried and said, God showed me you was going to be our pastor.
Yeah.
So I said, I accepted that role. 3 years I was in that role. Yes, God was moving on the ministry and doing some things, but I had some major shoes to fill. Pastor James E. Smith, who was there for some 40-some years, marched with Dr. King, really had that church for many years. The church started to go down once he started to get sick, and his brother took over for about 7 years, and before I came in. But I knew when I went to juvenile court in March of last year, and I got down to juvenile court, they told me to come down because it was a gang fight, some stuff going on. And when I got down to juvenile court, Ray, that was my first time back at juvenile court since I was there when I was 15 years old.
Yes, sir.
I was at that time caught up in a gang fight at the school where I was facing 10 years being bound over as an adult for aggravated assault. I thank God that after spending 3 days in the jail cell there, they came down and said, well, he never hit nobody. The judge said, okay, dismissed, dropped the charges, and I went home. But that trauma lived on with me. I didn't know it until I got there that day, and I got ready to get on that elevator, and I just went blank. Well, when I got up on the floor there, and I got ready to talk to the young men, all I could see is that cell that I was in for 3 days. And I went over to the young men, and I said to them, I said, tell me, I said, it ain't what's wrong with y'all, it's what happened to you.
Right.
First young man that was sitting there, to make a long story short, I said, tell me what happened to you. He said, Coach, Pastor, you don't remember me? I said, remember you from where? He said, I was on your basketball team last year. And it started to hit me, and he said, well, I said, man, tell me what happened to you. And he said, when I was 8 years old, Pastor, in Frazier, they killed my daddy. He died in my arm. I walked in the room, he died in my arm.
Man.
He said, when I was 12 years old, my friend got killed. And I said, man, tell me who is your role model. And he pointed over to a young man there and said, Pastor, that's my role model. And it hit me. It pricked my heart because I was like, man, I'm supposed to be your role model.
Right.
But I didn't have time. Senior pastor, I was trying to run the 4 walls of the church. I let my brother coach the team and another young man coach the team. And so I went with them. And so I went back that night and I wrote my another resignation and said, hey, assistant pastor, this is what you called to do. But I'm called to be out here in these streets and working with these young people.
Mentoring.
And so I thank God that I answered the call, because since then I've been invited twice to be the keynote speaker with the governor. I'm now serving on the strategic plan team for the state of Tennessee to help address adversity. So millions of kids are being impacted because I got in my purpose and out of a position. So that's why I stepped.
Is it a correct assumption, based on what I have studied and heard, that when you were that young man that was on that fence, whether you were going to be doing time
Mm-hmm.
or running the streets, slinging the dope, and those type of things, that you encountered a man named Ricky Floyd.
Yeah. Well, before Ricky Floyd, Ricky came on a little later, but it was Director Tony Armstrong,
Okay.
who was our former police director, who grew up in the neighborhood across the yard and dated my sister, and we had close family ties. Me and his family, we still real close. Tony, when he became a rookie cop, my brother was one of the first arrests that he made, and he told me, he said, "Chuck, you're not going to end up in jail like your brother and like these other ones." So he said, "I'm going to need you to get yourself down there in that girls and boys club," and it was a boy club at the time,
right,
and get yourself together. So it was days that when he found out I was not there on the weekend going to the basketball game, he come pick me up himself and made sure that I got to those games. So that type of intervention early on. So people say, "Chuck, you like police?" Well, it was a cop that saved me,
right.
and so I don't have a problem with them unless they pulling me over and
Yeah. Right.
but
and
hassling them. But
yeah.
I don't have no problem with them because I tell them about my good friend Tony.
Yeah.
But there is that, and then God sent Pastor Floyd as a spiritual father. Because my daddy, growing up, he was sick all his life. He was on dialysis, and my daddy died around I was 18, 19 years old due to dialysis. But we had really good relationship, but short conversations growing up. But it was that spiritual encounter that I knew I was called, but I wasn't walking in that call. And then when I met Pastor Ricky Floyd a little bit later, around 2005, God really connected us and really helped me recognize the good in me despite all the bad that I had inside of me.
It's got to be amazing. I follow along on social media, and having seen where you've come from, and then watching as Apostle Floyd was developing himself into a man. You're talking about a man that every day walked with a heavy cross around town, and just didn't have any shame. I watched him preach. He doesn't have any shame. It's got to be a reward for you and for him to see you where you are today, because he did what you said when you said you resigned from the church. Is I'm going to go out there, and if I can help one young man, and that's what happened. So it has to be fulfilling that he didn't waste his time. And it has to give him a boost to know that you can invest in a youth, and that happened. I've saved the best for last. You've made a big announcement, and I think anybody that doesn't get in touch with you on this is a fool. It's taken you many, 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 many years to gain the knowledge that you have from all different aspects. I saw that you were offering a 3V Leader Workshop 9-month training course. I believe that's a commitment of 2 nights a month. 2 days. 2 days a month. 2 days a month for 9 weeks.
9 months.
9 months. I couldn't imagine a dollar figure on that. I know that you did say that in certain circumstances you've got some scholarships available. I do know that if you are interested in this, you need to send Charlie email at 3vleader at legacyoflegends.
3vleader at gmail.com.
Gmail, my apologies. Or catch him on Facebook.
Yeah.
Or just stand on a corner on Fraser any time during the day, and you'll see him flying by you.
Yeah, yeah.
Just look for his vehicle. But I did want to touch on that because it's a golden opportunity.
Yeah.
The man's doing it out of the graciousness of his heart.
Yeah.
This is 18 days that he's committing to the community. But
it's an investment. I see it as an investment. The same investment that was put in me. One of the things, like I said, this is going to take an army to do.
Absolutely.
And it's one thing, and it's something that was said to me many years ago, that a squeaky wheel get the oil, get oil.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when you got many squeaky wheels saying the same thing, and guess what? Many of our children will benefit because of the revelation understanding. There was a man I follow, a mentor, from TV mentor, Mike Murdoch. He's a TV evangelist, preacher. He speak about wisdom. He said a man that he followed for years, who wrote a book, he was 72 years old. He said, I learned in 2 weeks what that man took 72 years to get. So for you
That's
to
profound,
be, yeah. And so for what took me over 15 years of community engagement, going to the DC, going all over the country in different places to be trained, you have the opportunity, basically, if you break it down, about 3 weeks of the days that you spend with me over the 9 months. But also I'm excited that Martin Luther King Prep High School is going to partner with us. So we're going to have about 20 students in the schools that we're going to be working with at the same time. So you're going to have an opportunity to pour into them while I'm pouring into you.
That's awesome.
And so it's going to be that bridge
awesome.
of building it. And then we're going to do a Learn Why Do project at the end. It's going to be something that collectively the 7 Ps, the students, and us who are in this program are going to do to help build capacity in our communities, which give you the capacity to be connected with the University of Memphis, University of Tennessee, the District Attorney Office, the Memphis Police Department, the Sheriff Department, all of our collective health department, all of our partners. You will have those connections and resources to when you leave this program.
I already know the answer to this question, and it has to do with that. But who's a prospective client for this training?
On top of the students, the parents, the police, the politicians, the proprietors, the principals, all the P's.
That's right.
Come on down. Again, reach out. We do have scholarships because, again, it's an investment that is being made. I'm excited. I'm going to be meeting with University of Tennessee this week as we talk about even deeper collaborations and partnerships with them on how some of those physicians are going to mentor some of the young people who will look towards that health track. Getting into there, and I'm glad to have favor with the dean of school there at the University of Tennessee.
Absolutely.
Dr. Strong, send a shout out to him, and Dr. John McCauley. He's gonna get me. But appreciate him as well and all the great work that they're doing. Dr. Stewart and all of them who are collaborating with us to again bring unity in our community.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, this comes to our point now where if you've got a question for Charlie Caswell or myself, but preferably Charlie Caswell, go ahead and type it into the chat. Charlie's got time here to take a few questions.
I see Sister Kim there with Refuge Memphis. And she's going to be in our program going through this. She don't need no training. She's been trained plenty, but she's going to be a great collaborative partner who's going to be with us. Refuge Memphis doing powerful work, her and Dunn Willer. Again, helping the homeless, helping families get on track. Again, check that organization out, Refuge Memphis. If you got any questions, again, you can type in your questions. We have seen many people have stopped by. And again, we ask that you share this video. Pray that somebody is blessed by the message and the words that we shared on today. And know that you can too be a visible, vocal, and valuable leader. All it takes is a willing and passionate heart. It was Dr. King that said, my subject and verb may not agree, but being a servant is what it's all about. He was a servant, and what he served have made an impact on generations to come. And that's what we're looking for you to do.
And I think that's great words of wisdom. This came very fast to me. I had been thinking that I wanted to do something, and for you God-fearing people, when the Lord wakes you up at 3 o'clock and in the morning, and you got to get up and start writing, and it was real simple. It was only 3 words. It was ability versus availability. Mm-hmm. You can have all the ability do you want, but do you make it available?
Right.
And that kind of goes back into what you share with the 3V side. I know Pastor Charlie will be checking back in the comments here as he gets a chance, and he will answer those questions likewise. It's a trademark here on Making a Difference in the lives of others that I ask my famous question. So here we go. Mm-hmm. Pastor Charlie Caswell, if today you were granted one and only one wish, what would it be, sir?
If I was granted one and only one wish, it would be for every believer out there to be wealthy. Because the wealth of a believer is a threat to the enemy. Because I know that what it is that we are trying to do, if all of us had the capacity to do it, the devil better watch out.
Oh, indeed. Well, I appreciate you, Charlie, for coming on. I'm going to do you a twist, since you're the pastor, but I'm going to
Yeah.
close us in prayer tonight.
Yeah, that's it.
I want to thank you again for taking time. I want to thank you for all the things that you do. I pray that I did say hello to your wonderful sister Vanessa.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't, I
You're
will
in
never
trouble.
hear the end of it for sure.
Yeah, she does.
But yeah, indeed. I want to thank everyone for coming out. This will be available on replay. It'll also be on podcast on Spreaker, Pandora, and iTunes, and I'll get those links posted up. So with that, we'll close in a little prayer briefly here.
All right.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this beautiful, wonderful day, Lord. We thank you for joining like-minded people, Lord, and your cause, and helping us build an army to fulfill your cause and in your glory, Lord. None of it is for us. It is all for you and your children, Father. And I just thank you for having Charlie Caswell here and share his insight. I thank you for the heart that you have changed in this man's life and the things that he does for people each and every day. We love you with all our heart, and we ask for continued blessings for everyone out there in this world. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. God bless you.